I met Haley Rusk at his 21st birthday party. Before that, I had heard his name a little bit at school. Linda Peacock, come with me to Haley Rusk's birthday party tomorrow. Camille Brown clutched her phone and fell onto my couch. I looked puzzled. Haley Rusk. But I don't know him. I don't know each other. How embarrassing it is to go. Camille Brown seemed to expect me to say that, and pulled her phone up to me. I'm not familiar with it. Murphy Red said that there are so many people, everyone brings friends, and they all want to take the opportunity to socialize. Her thin white fingers swiped across the screen. Besides, the rumored Playboy is superior in appearance. Don't you want to see it? Murphy Red was a friend of Camille Brown since childhood, and he seemed to have a good relationship with Haley Rusk. I nodded, and she pulled me into a group, sending Camille Brown away. Just after taking a shower, I opened my phone and looked at the group messages. After 12 o'clock, a red envelope popped up in the group, sending out a person's nickname H, and the avatar was black. The system is sluggish due to the wetness of the fingertips. I dried my hair before picking up my phone. The group shows me patting H, and calling out to Daddy. Immediately, H patted me and asked, "What are you doing?" Someone in the group ha ha ha, and then sent a blessing, which was already drowned in a pat, and I hurriedly withdrew. My face was a little hot. It's embarrassing. I couldn't help but complain in my heart, who is a good person, who takes advantage of it with a pat. The group sent blessings one after another. After a moment's deliberation, I also copied and pasted my blessings. I was really curious about Haley Rusk, and I knew very well that their circle was very different from the circle in which I lived. The prince's red envelope, don't be in vain. I received the red envelopes, only to find that the average person has several hundred, and I have received quite a lot, so I feel a lot better. It was early November, and there were a lot of maple leaves scattered along the roadside. The autumn wind penetrates the thin clothes, and people can't help but feel a hint of coldness. Camille Brown and I drove into the villa compound with a succession of vehicles. Outside the window, there was a lively sound. I looked at the huge garden beside me, decorated with a large fountain, and the flowers and plants were well cared for. Not far away, men and women by the pool are chatting and chatting. I walked down the hall, looked at the table full of desserts, took a piece and tasted it. Camille Brown pulled me to sit outside the hall. It's such a big battle. I straightened the hem of my skirt and sighed. Camille Brown, who was beside her, looked up at the staircase. Murphy Red, where have you been? I've been looking for you, for a long time. I looked into her gaze and saw him standing on the stairs. I'm looking for someone. He spoke. Then he raised his eyebrows. Now I found it. I followed Murphy Reed's line of sight and subconsciously looked back. The man was dressed in dark lounge clothes, and the hair on his forehead was still a little wet, exuding a faint lemon fragrance. Dressed casually and comfortably, and if you guess it right, this is the owner of the villa, Haley Rusk. Looking upward, looking along the Adam's apple, the thin lips are darker, the eyes are cynical, and there is a shallow tear mole at the end of the eye. I was stunned for a long time. When I looked at him, my breath suddenly became chaotic, and then I took my eyes off him. A voice in my heart told me that I had fallen in love with Haley Rusk at first sight. Later, I realized that maybe many things were predestined from the first acquaintance. The game has just begun. Camille Brown couldn't sit still and rushed to referee the first round. Look at the playing cards in your hands, and I now announce that the two who have drawn hearts and spades will have a glass of wine. I looked at the cards in my hand, and breathed a sigh of relief. It was Murphy Red, who drew hearts, and it was another man who drew spades. Camille Brown clapped her hands and applauded, and the audience continued to cheer. In the end, the two drank a glass of wine, with difficulty in front of everyone. The second round, the third round, and then I was surprisingly lucky, and they all escaped. Dark until the last round, I looked at the cards in my hand, and thought to myself that something was wrong. Murphy Red, who was the referee, cleared his throat. In the last round, let's play the fun. Draw the two people who are the king and the little king, look at each other affectionately for 30 seconds, and, looking at the king in his hand, his heart rose to his throat. Men and women, be a couple for a month. No, the first few rounds were not so big, and there was even truth, or dare. On the other side, Haley Rusk stood up and flipped the playing cards. Xiao Wang. The scene was even more excited. Everyone thought that the rumored playboy Haley Rusk was nothing unusual about love, and just wanted to know who the other king was. Camille Brown looked at my cards, curled the corners of her mouth uncontrollably, and winked at me. Who will be the king? I slowly stood up and flipped the cards over as well. Late at night, watching each other's friend applications, I couldn't sleep. Isn't there a penalty for not being able to afford to play? Early one morning, I was woken up by a phone call. I rolled over, and my voice was a little soft. Hey, Linda Peacock, I'm downstairs in your dorm. The man coughed lightly, his voice came through the microphone, and his mind suddenly remembered to play a game for couples for a month. I reflexively got out of bed. Haley Rusk. HMM. In this way, Haley Rusk and I have been in love since the third day of implementation. It's better to say that I changed my avatar to a pure white one. I was a little speechless for a moment. You called me down early in the morning to let me change this avatar. Haley Rusk bit her lip and smiled a little cheaply. Traces of love, you have to let everyone see it. Nerves. He is wearing a gray sweatshirt today with a bear printed on it. I have to say that the original ruffian appearance looks a lot more friendly against the backdrop of this dress. I pouted, then I'm leaving. As soon as the words fell, he was nearly 1.9 meters tall in front of me. Just when I was a little confused, he put his hand in his pocket, bowed his head and said, I bought too much, remember to eat it. Another night, Haley Rusk called me. Hey. What's the matter? I want to call, listen to you. Leave a trace of love and send it to the group. No, there are really people in the group who still care about drawing the king and the little king, and make a game for a couple for a month. In this way, Haley Rusk figured out my biological clock and class schedule, sent me breakfast for more than a month, and accompanied me to class when he was free. He was a little unpredictable to me. For more than a month, none of us mentioned it, so it was so natural to continue. Occasionally, I hear a few voices coming from the bathroom, and it's some girls gossiping. Haley Rusk is so handsome, and his girlfriend is so beautiful. Sure enough, beautiful is the admission ticket, and the one at the school gate was also good looking. It's a new girlfriend, this time, right? The sound faded away with the footsteps, saying I don't care if it's false, but I don't have the courage to ask Haley Rusk. I am well aware that little by little I am falling to Haley Rusk. After class in the afternoon, I received a message on the way. I played ball in the playground in the evening. Okay, do you want me to go? The other party replied in seconds, well, girlfriends are not allowed to express themselves. It won't be any traces of love. I almost forgot that it had been almost half a year since that game punishment ended. So after dinner, I went to the convenience store, and bought a bottle of water, and when I came out, the sky was blues. A small plot of land next to the playground was crowded with people, and just as I was about to walk around, a male voice stopped me. Linda Peacock. It's me. I was stunned, and when I turned around, I saw a bespectacled polytechnic man standing in the middle of a candle surrounded by love, holding a bouquet of roses in his arms. The people around me made room for me, and the coaxing came and went. The other side was immersed in romance, and I was speechless. Linda Peacock, I've always liked you, and when you chased you, you didn't want to meet me, and you blocked me. Well, that seems to be the case. I know that girls can be shy and reserved, but after careful consideration, I finally mustered up the courage to make a formal confession to you at school. Would you like to? The more he talked, the more excited I became. I looked at him, my hand holding the water trembled a little. It was really a big deal. Hurriedly interrupted him. Wait, I'll interrupt. You're Jaden. He was a little excited, laughed, and his face turned red unconsciously. It's me, you sent me good night. I instantly remembered that Jaden was the boy who had been chasing me a year ago, and he kept getting messages every day. Considering that it was someone who had met in reality, he still didn't choose to block it. Don't message me. The sentence came from the other side. If you say goodnight to me, I will never bother you again. Playing abstract, I thought he was a funny man, and I was still thinking about this good thing. Simply, good night. But in exchange for the news bombardment, it caused harassment to me, so I blocked him. I came to my senses, a little confused, and waved my hand. Thank you, I'm sorry, Before I could finish speaking, a familiar figure walked in, took my hand and walked out. I'm sorry, my girlfriend is busy. Haley Rusk didn't say a word all the way, silently glancing at me with his peripheral vision. The wind whistled behind me, and I spoke. "Won't I see you playing?" He had a straight face, and although the surface was light, it was difficult to see that he was unhappy. On second thought, I don't think a playboy like Haley Rusk would really be jealous of having feelings for me, but more possessive. The possessiveness of a relationship with a certain person at a certain time. I blinked and poked him tentatively. "Haley Rusk, are you angry? Do you want to drink water?" The young master answered 3 questions in 1 word, and I immediately captured the point. As soon as he finished speaking, he stopped, took the water, pinched the cap, and poured it into his mouth. The Adam's apple rolled, his lips were moistened and reddened by water, fine beads of sweat were on his forehead, and he wore a football uniform that showed his unique youthful atmosphere. Sensing my gaze, his eyes were a little more smug, but they were quickly obscured. Eyes flickered. He leaned over to me. I froze in place, my hands on his chest, forced to endure the sudden kiss. Haley Rusk's kissing skills are undeniably good, and I can't help but think of the bathroom remarks in my mind. He let go of me, the corners of his mouth curled down, and his eyebrows showed grievance. "Linda Peacock, you're not paying attention." Seeing that I didn't speak, he immediately turned his gaze away, and added, "I don't want to be angry." He picked up a corner of my clothes. "Look at me. I can't bear it." But the evening breeze woke me up a little, and after some consideration, I blurted out, "A month of gaming is long over." He paused, his face even colder. "What do you mean, Haley Rusk? It's a game for you, isn't it?" He choked and stared straight at me. I deliberately added the word, "Also, he loves face, so it is more decent to say this. The game is just for fun, and it's not fun to play with it all the time." He snorted, and before he could see his expression, he turned his back. "So you're playing with me?" "Forget it, this question doesn't matter at all." I looked at his back and didn't speak. "Okay, since it's a game, don't take it too seriously. Yes, he is the prince in your circle, how can he withstand my words? Turn around and leave me alone. Heartbeat is real, but I love myself more. I know very well that people who are hurt by their feelings will die a terrible death. So I ended the relationship early. After that day, I went to class as usual, ate, and stayed in my apartment to watch dramas when I had time. And Haley Rusk is just the opposite. The circle of friends changes every few days, and he spends all day drinking. At this time, Murphy Red had just finished taking a shower at home and was sitting on the sofa in the living room. He craned his neck and put on his coat. Take the phone and comment at the bottom, "What's going on lately?" Sluggish. I didn't expect the other party to reply. But when the phone rang, Haley Rusk replied, "I was dumped by my sweetheart." Murphy Reed's hands shook with excitement, barely holding his hand. The nerd is emotionally enlightened, but it doesn't seem to be going well. Fortunately, I asked in the end, "Yo, who?" "Linda Peacock." Since then, I dumped Haley Rusk and spread the word in school. Coincidentally, when I was looking at my phone, Haley Rusk happened to pat me on the phone, on Weshit. The other person patted me, and took a bite of poop. Since that operation, I've changed the shot. Then there is a pause for 2 or 3 seconds, and the other person withdraws. I felt a little funny and even a little cool, when I was holding my phone. What a sundeer. In the end, I had to lose under my pat. I patted Haley Rusk, and called, "Brother." Dead perverted, absolutely deliberate, waiting for me to take the bait. In the end, I honestly withdrew it. When Camille Brown heard the news, she was even more gossipy, and kept grabbing me to ask why. After asking, he had to report to Murphy Red, and the two ate melons together. My reply was also perfunctory, until she coughed lightly and said bluntly, "Linda Peacock. Haley Rusk doesn't seem to be a dandy." I flipped through the book and paused. Nonchalantly, "How do you say this? His previous girlfriends seem to be all alone, and that person is his own sister. Her sister is good at makeup, and she usually wears a lot of makeup." With his face, the rumors were naturally spread by uninformed people. Hearing this, where can I still read the book in front of me? After a long time together, now in the eyes of Haley Rusk, I am the one who plays around. The sound of rain gradually began to hit the glass window, and then the thunder flashed outside the window. Looking through the window, I saw a familiar figure in the opposite aisle. He didn't hold an umbrella, and looked this way in the rain. Before I could see it, he disappeared into the aisle with the flow of people. I didn't think much of it, sitting in a 24-hour convenience store, looking at the oden on the table that has not yet been eaten in a days. As the rain began to fall, the convenience store door was pushed open, and thoughts were pulled back. I looked out the door. My heart trembled. There was a watermark on the man's body, and the umbrella was a little unwet. He placed the umbrella in the corner, and was not surprised at all when he saw me. His eyebrows slightly raised, and he walked in with a blank face. I hung my head and froze for a moment. There wasn't much to the convenience store, except for the sound of Haley Rusk picking out the packages on the sidelines. Eliminating waste is the love of food and the respect for money. I silently finished the last bite of oden, pushed the stool with my feet, and turned to walk to where he was. The man leaned sideways, holding a bottle of yogurt in his hand, still cold, and could not see any emotion. I said, "Haley Rusk." The usual appearance of hanging children is gone. The corners of his mouth were raised, but I couldn't make out the slightest smile. Heh, if he is like this, it must be difficult to coax. I was a little discouraged, and in a bad mood. Never mind, I didn't know what to do, and my brow furrowed even tighter. Nothing. Before I could finish speaking, I turned around and left, looking out the window at the rain. I gritted my teeth and thought to myself, grab the umbrella in the corner and run outside. Didn't forget to pretend and threw a sentence at him. Classmate, borrow your umbrella. Only borrow, not return. The phone rings with a series of tones. I turned on my phone with sleepy eyes and a blank expression. Linda Peacock. I'm going abroad in a few days. Camille Brown made a sullen expression with her head propped up. Even though I was sleepy, I was still a little reluctant. Why is it so fast all of a sudden? My dad has already bought my plane ticket for me. I'm calling Murphy Red. Can you come with me to the water park in a few days? I should come down in one bite. Swipe your finger across the screen to pick a gift for her. Haley Rusk was there. I looked at Camille Brown, and hurried the message with my eyes. Seeing her dazed, I sighed, and it seemed that the other party didn't know. The man across from me didn't care. He wore sunglasses so I couldn't catch his gaze. I saw water droplets running down my neck, and my wheat-colored skin was exposed to the sun. However, the abs and the mermaid line can be seen, and there's a lot of it. I looked away, pretending not to see. I was still a little weak about the umbrella last time, but now I peek at it. It's too shameful. In order to clear up the misunderstanding, after a day of playing, I also thought about talking to him, but he didn't appreciate it at all. I poked him, lowered my head, and said solemnly, "I'm sorry." He also raised his eyebrows, pretending not to understand. The prince has a good face. He doesn't want to be so straightforward. I understand. From time to time, I pretended to fall over him, and touched him by the way. He leaned over and held me up. I immediately spoke, looking pained. "Ouch, my foot is broken." He sighed and pointed to one of the studs in front of him. "Your studs are off." I subconsciously took 2 steps forward. "Where?" When I reacted, he pointed to my arm around his waist. "Why didn't I see you taking the initiative before?" I kept my head down and didn't speak. Active. I was going to smoke when I made voice calls before. "Okay." Murphy Red looked disgusted, but finally took Camille Brown's hand, and walked to another area. "TSK. Tired. Let's go play there." "Haley Rusk. Do you want water?" I cleared my throat, and stared at his sunglasses. "I'm sorry, I don't drink this." He took off his sunglasses, and his black eyes moved. "Linda Peacock, is this how you coax?" The more I think about it, the more aggrieved I become, and the more aggrieved I become, the more angry I become. Come on, love to drink or not, sister also wants to save face. Eventually, I couldn't help but pull Haley Rusk behind me, after passing the booming stall. "I want ice cream." He glanced at me and turned to line up. I smiled and compared. "Buy 2. He reluctantly lined up and opened his mouth to talk to me about the conditions. "You're almost menstruating. 1 at most." I blinked, followed him, and said to him in a reasonable tone, "There's another one that's yours." "Oh." His expression stretched slightly, and the corners of his mouth raised an imperceptible smile. The young master was secretly refreshed, but he didn't say anything. The day I took Camille Brown to the airport, I reluctantly said goodbye to her. True sisters. In the end, she did not forget to tell me earnestly, sister, love has to be grasped by yourself. Since there is a misunderstanding that you want to solve, or if you really want to apologize, consider yourself thicker than the walls. I thought I had misheard. In the middle of the night, turning over and over, I stared at the interface of my phone, silently reading the number, and my fingertips were hesitating to dial. The door suddenly opened, and the smell of wine spread through the room. I panicked, and just as I was about to shout, someone hugged me tightly from behind. It's me, Haley Rusk. It occurred to me that my spare key was still with Haley Rusk. My heart trembled slightly, and I unconsciously curled my fingers. Come to think of it, now is not the time to sit down and have a good conversation. I turned away, unable to break free, simply patted his face. You're drunk. I'll send you home. I looked up, and by the light of the bedside lamp, I noticed that he had dyed his hair dark maroon, and his bangs were still slightly curly. He was silent, looking at me with a slightly misty look in his eyes, and a little rosy on his cheeks, like a puppy. Seeing that my gaze stopped on his face, his eyes instantly moistened, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. A little stubborn. Don't be so fierce to me. I'll sleep with you tonight. He doesn't know how drunk he looks. So suitable. I brushed the palm of my hand on my waist and interlocked his fingers, and tiptoed to peck at his cheek. Haley Rusk's head fell on my shoulder with a thud like a flip of a switch button, and I leaned my back against the wardrobe door to make it less difficult. I'm months younger than Haley Rusk, but I can't help but tease. Haley Rusk, call me sister. He lowered his eyes, without the slightest hesitation, and said softly, sister. Realizing that the clothes on my shoulders were wet, I picked up his face and looked at it again, and cried. I sighed and instantly realized. Men's tears, women's stimulants. Haley Rusk's contrast today makes me want to bully him even more. The man seemed to know my thoughts, holding my fingertips to explore, and the hot temperature of my skin made me shiver. Touch you, don't break up. The atmosphere in the room gradually heated up, and my consciousness became more and more blurred as the kiss fell. I wrapped my arms around Haley Rusk's neck, and some of them couldn't find a point of support. He tilted his head and lowered his voice. Are you afraid of pain? Hey, how can there be a girl who isn't afraid of pain? I pouted and glared at him, blushing a little. Is that okay? When I woke up again, the sun was shining, and the temperature behind me made me gradually regain my consciousness, and my sleepiness disappeared in a flash. I turned around, my voice a little hoarse. Haley Rusk. The man was sleeping soundly, and before he could open his eyes, his head pressed against my neck and shoulders. Anger is better than sweetness. Felt a little unhappy, pulled his bangs flat, and said against his will, who made you hot, ugly to death? My leg was a little sore, and I patted him impatiently. A little hot. I'm going to get up. He grabbed me with his long arms and pushed me back. My sister wants to slip away after taking advantage. It was winter. The school sycamore was full of fallen leaves, and it was almost evening, and the cold wind was biting. Haley Rusk asked me to meet, said goodbye to my roommate after class, and walked straight to the school gate. When I saw Haley Rusk, he leaned against the side of the car, and when he saw me, his eyes lit up instantly, and I noticed that he was holding a large bouquet of roses in his hand. I took the flowers, a little overwhelmed. He smiled lightly. Take off your coat and drape it over me, baby. Remember to wear more next time. I nodded. My eyes lit up, and I smiled. Why did you give me flowers all of a sudden? He touched my head with a little emotion in his eyes, then lowered his head and said silently, after a month of playing, I thought you saw my mind, but then I understood. Love is action, and love hidden in the heart does not count. I'm sorry, baby, but I'm giving you too little security. At some point, a small corgi slipped out of the car and ran towards me, with his tongue out. Time is changing, but my feelings are not. 2 years ago I saw you feeding a little corgi on the side of the road, tears flowing, pouting and talking to it. I thought, how can there be such a cute girl? Later, when I fed the corgi, I would have your face in my mind, and that's when I realized something was wrong with me. I froze in place, looking into his eyes. Memories flooded back my mind, and I was speechless for a while. I think a confession starts with a bouquet of flowers. The corners of his mouth were raised, and his eyes were full of smiles. Linda Peacock, I love you. In the middle of winter, snowflakes hit the broken hair in front of his forehead. Would you like to be with me all the time? Memories freeze frame. The first snow and the person you like together. He spoke to me about our moments. Our first acquaintance wasn't at that meeting. Memories travel back and forth to 2 years ago. As a southerner, I was a little uncomfortable when I first arrived in this northern city. I was worried that my parents would be under too much pressure, so I would work part-time on weekends and find time to write in the dormitory. The northern winter is very cold, and the tired body is wrapped in a thick down jacket to get off work. Stepping on the soft snow, and answering a call from my mother, Linda Peacock. Is it going to be a holiday? I sniffed and nodded. Come on, Mom. What do you want to eat? I'll bring some of this specialty. Mom smiled in front of the screen. Mommy doesn't want to eat souvenirs. Linda Peacock just needs to come home safely. After the phone is cut off, I stepped on the thick snow. The cold wind was biting, and I felt a little sad. There was a little corgi tossing in the snow under the street lamp, and I went to the convenience store to buy some grilled sausages. What's even more sad is that the grilled sausage is in its mouth, and it doesn't even eat it. I ate the grilled sausage in one go, and the tears flowed uncontrollably. Since you don't eat my grilled sausage, just listen to me. You won't understand it anyway. Whimpered and talked for most of the day, and was about to get up, when he raised his head. The boy in front of him was wearing a black down jacket and a navy blue scarf tied around his neck, although half of his face was covered by a mask. His eyebrows and eyes were handsome. The whole body is more of a teenager's youthful atmosphere. He lowered his eyes and handed over a piece of paper, with a smile. Are you crying? I hurriedly got up and took it. Okay, thank you. His eyes were deep and gentle, and he seemed to hesitate. Well, happy every day. I froze in place, feeling a little warm. Then, turning sideways, go home. Just when I was wondering, I saw the little corgi fart walking after him. People will forget their sorrows and remember warm memories. Henceforth, I remembered his words, but his face was blurred in memory. Linda Peacock. Haley Rusk got serious and suddenly hugged me from behind. I was relieved, a little dazed. I booked my ticket. I turned around and smelled the faint scent of soap on him. I mentioned to him that when I was a child, my mother bathed me with soap, and the smell would be reassuring. A hint of astonishment flashed in his eyes. Where are you going? Yesterday I heard my baby say that he misses his mother. My eyes were a little red. I lowered my eyes, and I couldn't speak for a while. Haley Rusk will always remember every detail of me. That winter, he followed me home. The day Haley Rusk met my parents were very polite, stuffing snacks into his pockets and eating for him. And he was very reserved. Even when you go out with me to buy breakfast, you don't dare to say much. I sneered, took his hand and tiptoed a kiss on his cheek. Are you nervous? He coughed lightly and looked around like a thief. Be careful to be seen by the elders. After glancing, he put my hand in his pocket and put it in my ear and said, well, sort of. I instantly thought he was a little cute, and I couldn't help but remind him, look up. His smile froze, and he saw my dad looking at us kindly on the second floor. In the evening, he and I walked hand in hand along the street. He had well-defined features, and his beautiful eyes were fixed on me. I joked, well, husband sense. He was more than a head taller than me, and because he didn't hear me, he bent down and asked, hey. I shook my head and laughed. I mean, you're a big idiot, HMM. He let me call him stupid. Then the bony fingers stroked my hair, and when I looked at each other, I looked in a trance. Will we go back to my house next time? I nodded, looked him in the eye, and paused for a few seconds. Okay, go back to your home. Extra, another year. Haley Rusk happened to be on a business trip today, and there was a lot of leisure around him. I finished the last chapter, closed the computer, and fell into bed. Opened the Weshit interface with Haley Rusk. Baby, I'm done. Good night. The other party replied after a few minutes, you are not allowed to say good night in the future. It is also accompanied by a kick flying, bear gif. Look at the familiar memes in front of you. This picture thief dog. I couldn't help but complain in my heart. Me, hey. Haley Rusk, you told the other men. I was stunned. He couldn't be Jaden, right? It's been a long time, and this man is still so calculating. I sneered and sent a bouquet of roses over. He. I'll just tell you in the future. Someday. Camille Brown, I've heard that, when you ask someone if there's something you're hiding from me, you always ask for something. Me, okay, I'll try it then. I closed my phone, and Haley Rusk had just come out of the bathroom with a towel in hand, the heat behind him gradually dissipating. Immediately, his eyes turned to me. His eyes were full of pampering, and the corners of his mouth instantly raised. What's wrong? I entered the play in a second, and asked seriously, have you been hiding something from me, all along? He was visibly stunned, a little flustered, looked at the phone on the table, and then walked up to me. You know everything. He really has something to hide from me. I was angry. Well, you'd better explain it to me, now. He gave me a quick peck in the face, and there was a faint scent of shower gel, which was my favorite pomegranate milk. The man was a little aggrieved, but finally confessed truthfully, I can't stop what Murphy Red wants to do to Camille Brown. What? Camille Brown ate melons and actually ate herself. I was a little excited, and I pretended to be cold and said, oh, when did that? On that trip to the water park. Murphy Red and I made a small deal. He asked me to break you up, and make him and Camille Brown a two-person world. And I'll be with you, by the way. Thinking about the scene that day, Murphy Reed's words were not disgusting, but just right. I was still a light bulb. Haley Rusk saw my 800 expressions a minute, and couldn't help but say, I'm sorry, wife. I should have told you earlier. I cleared my throat and leaned my head against him. It's not too late. It's not too late. It's time to tell me. When I opened my phone, I saw several messages from Camille Brown. Ask if there is anything. Sit back and wait to eat melons. Damn, Murphy Red has come out to see me, and he's almost downstairs at my house, so he's a good brother. Another 15 minutes passed. Linda Peacock. I treat him as a brother, and he actually wants to soak me. After living with Haley Rusk, his favorite thing to do was to call him. He always looked at me helplessly, and smiled dotingly, as if it were a gift. On the weekend, I lay on the sofa and hugged the fat pears that were fed, chasing variety shows, and enjoying myself. Haley Rusk, I want to eat strawberries. You wash me, is lazy, secretly orders takeout and is caught, and will say to him without a red face and a heartbeat, Haley Rusk, this amount of noodles is too much to eat, and it's a waste of you. Inspirational to be a self-disciplined woman during the holidays. Set the alarm clock with great interest, the day before yesterday, and get up early the next morning without admitting it. Haley Rusk, can you turn off the alarm clock quickly? A little bit more is to let him do my errands. When he came back with 7 or 8 deliveries in my hand, I gave him a gentle peck on the face to show my gratitude. He was a little dissatisfied. Bow, I just have a kiss after working so hard. It's still a face. I pretended not to understand and put a little more on his lips. Don't you like it? He raised an eyebrow and pulled out a box from his pocket, smiling a little evilly. Those that I bought on the way when I ran out. Now it seems that calling on him was a means of revenge. Living with Haley Rusk is always a blessing. He was an emotionally stable person. I'm ashamed that I really want to learn from Haley Rusk. He would also accompany me childishly over and over again, tirelessly. When I'm bored, I often like to ask him, do you love me? He pinched my face and said softly, I love you. I raised an eyebrow. How much do you love me? He thought for a moment and accommodated. It's like a mouse loves rice. I nodded with satisfaction and hung on him to reward the kiss. But he died to save face, and in the end, he was quietly and secretly cool because of my words. Of course, coaxing people often take a picture with their mobile phones. Camille Brown. Murphy Red Extra. Camille Brown hung up her scarf and went downstairs. Snowflakes filled the sky, and there was an extra shadow under the street lamps that were usually unmanned. An inexplicable feeling made her stop, looking at the figure in the distance, and she suddenly realized something. Crossed more than thousands of miles, and came all the way to see her. HMPH. Fools don't understand. Seeing her slowly approaching, the man hesitated for a moment and opened his hand to wait for her in place. Murphy Reed's nose was a little red from the cold. He looked at the stunned girl in front of him, and immediately said, "It's so cold abroad. Don't give young Master Ben a hug. Warm up." Camille Brown sneered, a little moved, and rushed over and hung on top of him. She wanted to speak, but didn't know what to say, so she hit a straight ball. Murphy read, "You like me, well." Declarative sentences. For the first time, Murphy Red blushed at a remark, a little overwhelmed. Camille Brown frowned and pretended to be reserved, then I reluctantly agree. Murphy Reed's hand holding her was a little hot, and he was happy. Love can be told by kisses, he thought. The dusk street lamps covered the sky with snowflakes, like a painting. There are two lovers embracing and kissing each other in the painting. The end.